I was on a long drive through the Midwest, heading back home after visiting a friend. It was supposed to be a straight shot, just 8 hours behind the wheel, nothing complicated. But around midnight, after hours of empty farmland and stretches of forest, I started to feel my eyelids getting heavy. I hadn't seen another car in almost 30 minutes, and the highway signs told me the next town was still 40 miles away. That's when I saw it, a glowing sign just off the highway, vacancy, Sunset Motel. I hadn't seen the place on my GPS, no listings, no reviews, nothing. But I didn't care. I needed sleep, and a cheap roadside bed was better than drifting off behind the wheel. So I took the exit and pulled into the cracked parking lot. The building was small, maybe a dozen rooms in a single row. The paint was peeling, the neon buzzed faintly in the night air, and not a single other car was parked outside. I remember thinking it was strange for a motel with the vacancy sign lit up to be completely empty. Inside, the lobby looked frozen in time, a faded floral carpet, a plastic ficus plant in the corner, a TV bolted to the wall playing static. Behind the desk sat a man in his late 60s wearing a button-up shirt that looked a little too big for him. He didn't greet me, he just stared until I said I needed a room. He slid a key across the counter without saying a word. A real key, not a card, but a heavy brass key with a chipped plastic tag that read Room 6. When I stepped back outside, the air felt colder than it should have. The row of rooms stretched in front of me, doors evenly spaced, each with a number painted in dull gold. My footsteps echoed on the concrete walkway, though it didn't feel like anyone else was there to hear them. Room 6 smelled faintly of mildew. The lamp flickered before settling into a dim glow, and the bedspread was patterned with a design I couldn't place, shapes that almost looked familiar, but not quite. I set my bag down and pulled the curtains shut. That's when I noticed something strange. Through the thin fabric, I could still see light outside. But instead of the single parking lot lamp I parked under, it looked like there were dozens of lights out there. Bright, unnatural, stretching farther than the lot should have gone. I pulled the curtain back and froze. The parking lot wasn't there anymore. Instead, I was staring out at what looked like a vast, empty corridor, white walls, no ceiling, stretching endlessly in both directions. It looked sterile, like the back rooms of a mall, but with no doors, no signs, no exit. Just an infinite hallway lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. I slammed the curtain shut and my heart pounded in my chest. I told myself I was overtired, that I was seeing things. But then came the knock. 3 slow knocks at the door. Housekeeping, a woman's voice said softly. My blood ran cold. It was past midnight and I hadn't even spent 10 minutes in the room. I didn't answer. I didn't move. A few seconds passed. Then the voice again, housekeeping. But this time, it sounded exactly like my own voice. I grabbed my bag and bolted. I didn't even look back at the window, didn't dare open the door. I went out the bathroom window, landed hard on the pavement, and sprinted for my car. When I glanced over my shoulder, every single door along the row of rooms was wide open, dark interiors gaping at me like mouths. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up, and here's the strangest part. Later, when I tried to find the motel again, there was nothing. No sign, no turnoff, just flat highway, mile after mile. My GPS showed nothing but fields. I don't know what I stayed in that night. I don't know what I saw when I looked out that window. But sometimes, when I drive late at night, I catch myself scanning the side of the road, looking for that glowing vacancy sign. And I pray I never see it again. I usually do my grocery shopping late at night. Less people, shorter lines, no chaos. That night was no different. I stopped by the store around 11:30, just before closing, planning to grab a few things before heading home. The parking lot was mostly empty when I pulled in, just a couple of cars scattered across the spaces. Inside, the lights buzzed faintly, and the air smelled like disinfectant, the way it always does after they mop the floors. At first, everything seemed normal. I grabbed a basket and started down the produce aisle. But after a minute, I realized I hadn't seen a single other person. No workers, no customers, not even the usual kid mopping the floor. The store was silent. I tried to shake it off. Maybe the employees were in the back. Maybe I just lucked out and come in at a weird lull. But as I moved further in, that silence grew heavier. My footsteps echoed in a way they shouldn't have, like the whole building was empty. That's when I noticed the shelves. At first glance, everything looked normal. Boxes, cans, rows of food. But when I stopped to actually look, something was wrong. The cereal brands weren't ones I recognized. The fonts on the boxes were almost right, but the words didn't make sense, like they were in some broken version of English. Crusty Oats instead of Frosted Oats, Milko Flakes with a cartoon cow that had too many teeth. I picked up a box, turning it over in my hands. The expiration date read March 47th, 1999. My stomach dropped. I put it back and moved quickly to another aisle, hoping it was just some weird shipment or off-brand stock. But it wasn't just the cereal. Every product was wrong. Toothpaste boxes with logos that looked slightly off. Bags of chips with strange colors I'd never seen. Soda bottles with labels written in a language I didn't recognize. Something jagged and sharp, like runes. I walked faster, basket swinging at my side, my heartbeat picking up. Still no people. No music playing overhead, just the hum of the lights and my own footsteps. Then, from the far end of the frozen food section, I saw movement. Relief washed over me. Finally, someone else. It was a man, dressed in a store uniform. But when I called out, "Hey, are you guys still open?" he didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. He just pushed a cart slowly down the aisle, stocking shelves with items that looked just as wrong as everything else. I hurried toward him. But the closer I got, the more I realized something was off. His movements were jerky, repetitive. He would lift a box, place it on the shelf, adjust it, then do the exact same motion again with the same box over and over like he was stuck on a loop. I stopped a few feet away. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. That's when he turned his head. His face looked normal at first, just a tired man on the night shift. But then he blinked, and for the briefest second, his features blurred like static across a TV screen. His eyes didn't line up. His mouth flickered between a smile and a frown. I dropped the basket and ran. Every aisle I passed looked longer than it should have, stretching into the distance like they'd never end. The shelves seemed taller, the lights brighter, and just when I thought I'd never find my way out, I turned a corner, and there it was, the front doors. I pushed through them and stumbled into the cool night air. The parking lot looked the same as before. A couple of cars, the hum of a streetlight, but when I glanced back, my blood ran cold. The store was completely dark. No lights, no signs, just an empty building with boards across the windows, like it had been abandoned for years. I didn't stick around to question it. I got in my car, floored it home, and I've never gone back. But sometimes, when I look at the groceries in my own kitchen, I get this horrible feeling. Like if I stare too long at the labels, the words might shift, the colors might change. And one day, I'll realize I never really left that store at all. There's this little cafe a few blocks from my apartment. Nothing special, just a quiet spot where I go sometimes to get work done or clear my head. I've been there enough times that the barista recognizes me, and the routine has always been the same. Order my drink, find a seat by the window, and spend an hour or two on my laptop. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to stop by. It was a gray day, drizzling outside, and the place was nearly empty. I ordered a black coffee. The barista gave me the usual smile, and I took a seat near the corner. At first, everything was normal. I sipped my coffee, scrolled through emails, and watched the rain streak across the glass. But after a while, I noticed something odd. The cafe was too quiet. The soft chatter of voices that usually filled the space wasn't there. No clinking of cups, no hiss of the espresso machine. When I looked up, the barista who'd served me was gone. The counter was empty. Even stranger, my coffee was still piping hot, steam curling from the surface. It hadn't cooled at all, even though I felt like I'd been sitting there for at least an hour. That's when I checked my phone. The time said 5:17 p.m. I clearly remembered it being around 2 when I'd walked in. Somehow, 3 hours had passed. I blinked, thinking maybe my phone had glitched, but when I glanced at the clock on the wall, it showed the same time. 5:17. And yet, the coffee in my hand was still fresh, as if I'd just been served. My chest tightened with unease. I stood up, looking around, and realized something else. Outside the window, the drizzle had stopped. The street was bone dry. The cars parked along the curb were different. A few of them looked older, with license plates in colors I didn't recognize. And the people walking by, they didn't look quite right either. Their clothes were unfamiliar styles, the brands on their shopping bags ones I didn't know. I sat back down, gripping the edge of the table. My heart was racing, but the cafe remained silent. When I looked around again, I realized there was someone else sitting 2 tables away. I hadn't noticed them before. It was a man in a dark coat, staring directly at me. His expression was flat, his eyes unblinking. On the table in front of him sat a cup of coffee identical to mine, steam rising from it just the same. When I made eye contact, he smiled, slowly, deliberately, and raised his cup like he was toasting me. I didn't stick around to see more. I grabbed my bag, left the coffee behind, and walked out into the street. The moment the door shut behind me, the sounds of the city rushed back. Car horns, voices, the patter of rain that had started again. I turned back to glance through the window, but the man in the dark coat was gone. The cafe looked normal again. A couple people at tables, the barista back behind the counter, like nothing had ever happened. When I checked my phone once more, the time still read 5:17. A chill went down my spine when I noticed the date beneath it. It wasn't Saturday anymore. It was Sunday. Somehow, I'd lost an entire day. And every time I walk by that cafe now, I can't bring myself to go inside. Because I know if I sit down with another cup of coffee, I might not come back out the same. It was a Thursday night after work, and I was exhausted. I lived in a mid-rise apartment building at the time, nothing fancy, just rows of identical beige doors and humming fluorescent lights in the hallway. I had lived there for almost 3 years, so walking that path up to my unit was automatic. I didn't even have to think about it anymore. That night, I got off the elevator on the 4th floor, like always, turned right, walked 10 doors down, and unlocked my apartment. Except, it wasn't my apartment. When I pushed the door open, everything looked almost right. Same layout, same carpet, same couch against the wall. But the little details were wrong. The pictures on the wall weren't mine, a wedding photo of a couple I'd never seen. A child's crayon drawing taped to the fridge. I don't have kids. Even the smell was different, faintly sweet, like vanilla candles. I just stood there, frozen, my key still dangling in the lock behind me. For a split second, I thought maybe I'd somehow walked into the wrong unit. But the number on the door was mine. The lock had opened with my key. My brain scrambled to make sense of it, whispering excuses. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe I'd miscounted the doors. But when I stepped further inside, the dread only deepened. On the coffee table sat a book I'd never owned, thick, leather-bound, with no title on the spine. And on the kitchen counter, a stack of unopened mail. Each envelope addressed to someone with my exact name, but the handwriting was wrong. That's when I heard it, the sound of water running in the bathroom. I panicked. Someone was in there. Someone who clearly lived here. But how did my key fit their door? And why was everything almost, but not quite mine? The water shut off. A shadow moved under the bathroom door. My chest tightened as the doorknob began to turn. I didn't wait to see who or what was about to step out. I yanked my key from the lock and bolted down the hallway, sprinting all the way back to the elevator. When the doors slid open, I stabbed at the lobby button again and again, heart hammering. I didn't stop until I was standing outside on the street, gasping for air. After a while, I convinced myself I must have made a mistake. Maybe the floors looked too similar. Maybe my fatigue had made me hallucinate, so I went back. I took the elevator up, walked down the hallway, counted the doors carefully this time, and stood in front of my unit. Same beige paint, same brass numbers. I slid the key in, turned it, and pushed the door open. And everything was normal, my furniture, my pictures, my mail, my smell, like nothing had ever happened. But here's what I can't get out of my head. When I turned to lock the door behind me, I noticed faint scratches around the keyhole. Fresh ones, like someone had tried forcing a key that didn't quite fit. And every now and then, late at night, when the building goes quiet, I swear I hear footsteps in the hallway. Slow, steady, stopping just outside my door. Like whoever lived in that other apartment is still looking for theirs. It started like any other morning. My alarm went off at 7. I dragged myself out of bed, made coffee, scrolled through my phone. Same routine as always. The news played quietly on the TV in the background, but then something caught my eye. The anchor mentioned an actor's name, a celebrity I'd grown up watching in movies, only it wasn't the right name. The face was the same, the movies were the same, but the name they spoke was completely different. I laughed it off at first, figuring maybe the anchor just messed up. But when I googled it, every single article, every page, every poster showed that wrong name. I shook my head and told myself I needed more coffee. But then I noticed the mug I was holding. A white coffee mug I'd owned for years, with the Google logo on it, except it didn't say Google. The font and colors were the same, but the letters spelled Google, like it had always been that way. My stomach tightened. I dug through my kitchen drawers, pulling out old pens, stickers, even a crumpled printout. All of them said Google, not one with the word I remembered. I started to feel dizzy. The rest of the day only got worse. At work, people talked about events that had never happened. Songs I remembered with different lyrics, brand names slightly off. Even the money in my wallet had designs I didn't recognize, presidents who'd never been on bills before. Everywhere I turned, the world felt close to mine, but not quite right. By evening, I was spiraling. I locked myself in my apartment, trying to calm down. I pulled out my old photo albums, desperate to see something that matched my memory. But the photos had changed too. In one, my best friend was smiling next to me, except it wasn't the same person. The face was different, but the photo still felt real, like it had always been that way. That's when I realized the truth. At some point that morning, I must have glitched. Maybe it happened when I woke up, maybe sometime later, but I had slipped sideways into a different reality. One that looked almost identical to mine, but wasn't. And here's the part that terrifies me the most. Nobody else noticed. To them, this world was normal. They didn't remember things the way I did. To them, it had always been Google, not Google. Always that actor with that name. Always those faces in my photos. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if I'll ever find my way back. But when I lie in bed at night now, I can't stop wondering, how many times has this already happened without me realizing it? How many different realities have I slipped through thinking nothing of it? And if I wake up tomorrow, what else will be different? I was driving home late one night after visiting my parents. The road was quiet, just a two-lane highway cutting through the woods, the kind of drive where the darkness feels endless. It was around midnight and I'd been on the road for about an hour when I saw another car in my rearview mirror. It was a black SUV, no headlights, just a faint shape illuminated by my taillights. At first, I thought maybe the driver forgot to turn them on, but something about it made me uneasy. I tapped my brakes to signal them, but the SUV didn't react. It just stayed behind me, keeping perfect distance. After a few miles, I glanced back again and it was gone. Just gone. The highway stretched behind me for miles, flat and empty, and there was no way it could have turned off without me noticing. I shook it off, told myself I was just tired, but then a few minutes later, I swear, I saw the exact same SUV pull out onto the road ahead of me. Same model, same tinted windows, same busted taillight on the right side. It was like it had somehow jumped from behind me to in front of me without ever passing. I slowed down, giving it some distance, but the whole time I couldn't shake this crawling feeling that something was off. Then, things got worse. The SUV turned onto a smaller road that cut into the forest. I let out a breath, relieved to have it gone, but just as I rounded the next curve, there it was again, in front of me. Same SUV, same busted taillight. That was impossible. The side road it turned down didn't reconnect with the highway for at least 20 miles. There was no way it could have gotten back in front of me. I pulled off at the next gas station, heart pounding, and just sat there in my car, trying to calm down. When I finally got out to pump gas, I froze. Parked at the far edge of the lot, under a flickering streetlight, was the black SUV, engine running, no one inside. I didn't even finish pumping. I got back in my car and drove off as fast as I could. The rest of the way home, the road behind me stayed empty. But every time I check my rearview mirror at night now, I half expect to see those tinted windows and that busted taillight following me again. I've been driving trucks for over 20 years, long-haul routes that take me across empty stretches of America most people never see. I've had my share of weird nights. Lights in the sky, animals darting out of nowhere, but there's one memory that still keeps me up when I'm parked at some lonely rest stop. It happened on Route 50, cutting through Nevada. They call it the loneliest road in America for a reason. Out there, it's just you, the desert, and miles of nothing. I was hauling a load of steel beams, running on my second night without sleep, when I passed mile marker 313. That's when I saw her, a woman, standing by the road. She was dressed in white, like an old-fashioned dress you'd see in a black and white movie. Her hair was long and dark, tangled in the wind. She didn't move. Didn't flag me down, just stood there, staring as my headlights swept over her. I told myself it was exhaustion playing tricks. You get that a lot on night drives, your eyes see shadows that aren't there. But then, a mile later, she was there again. Same white dress, same tangled hair, same blank stare. My skin crawled. I checked the mirrors, thinking maybe I'd passed someone walking the road, but it didn't make sense. She couldn't have gotten ahead of me that fast. I kept driving. At mile marker 315, she appeared for a third time. Closer to the road now. So close I swerved, the tires screaming against the asphalt. My heart pounded as I fought the wheel back under control. When I looked in the mirror, the road was empty. I drove for another 20 miles without stopping, too scared to even blink. Finally, I spotted a gas station glowing like a beacon in the dark. I pulled in, parked under the buzzing lights, and stumbled inside. The clerk behind the counter took one look at me and said, "You saw her, didn't you?" I froze. "White dress?" he continued. "Mile marker 313? I nodded slowly. He sighed. "She's been out there a long time. Some say she was a hitchhiker who got picked up and never made it home. Others say she's looking for the driver who hit her and kept going. All I know is, if she gets in your cab, you don't stop driving, ever." I laughed nervously, waiting for him to say he was joking, but his face stayed deadly serious. I fueled up, bought a coffee, and got back on the road, telling myself it was all just stories. But here's the part I've never told anyone. When I climbed back into my rig, the passenger seat was wet, like someone had just climbed in after standing in the rain. And to this day, whenever I drive Route 50 at night, I make damn sure to cover that seat with my jacket. Because sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I swear I see the shape of someone sitting there.